Click the links for Odysee, Bit Chute. Join the channel, become a member, support channel the other various ways. I was going to say, I don't think James Franco really knows the way of the world, but this is kind of a complicated thing. It's kind of a back and forth between the whole Me Too thing that started and then fizzled out because too many left-wing people were getting Me Too'd, especially in Hollywood, but also left-wing politicians. And I mean, Hollywood, it's like Me Too. It's like, okay, what's it going to catch? Oh, it's going to catch those right-wing. No, you're going to catch a lot of Hollywood people. So who runs Hollywood? It's not a bunch of right-wing people. So which is what happened is it turns out it's like, oh yeah, a bunch of, far left-wing Hollywood type people got popped. And some politicians too, but probably more left-wing politicians than right-wing politicians, because at least the right has got kind of a dogma where like the Mike Pence advice says, yeah, I don't go anywhere with a woman. Are you crazy? This is current year. It's like, that's really good advice. And if you're on the left-wing women are like, how dare he? How dare he? And then it comes to the question of, well, are there false accusations? Are there hoaxes? And you go, yeah. Actually, most of the accusations are false. And the thing is, all it takes is one. You don't want to be the one who's falsely accused. Like, oh, just behave yourself and you won't get accused. But what about the false accusation? Are you saying that people don't make false accusations? Because humans are going to be humans. So Mike Pence is like, yeah, he turns out he was playing the long game. It's like, yeah, and here's the thing, is like that's his philosophy that is publicly known. He goes, yeah, I'm never alone with a woman. Are you kidding? There's no way that's going to happen. So now, even if a scenario, like he's established that as custom and usage, so it's like it just deflects a lot of stress away from him, because even if a woman accuses him of something, it's like, yeah, he's got a long history of not being alone with women. Like he goes out of his way to avoid it. He just won't do it. And you're saying that you were alone with him and he did something. It's like you have a greater burden to overcome when you're trying to push that kind of thing. Oh, and I was saying, like, okay, Franco doesn't seem like he knows the hot water he's in. The thing is, it goes back and forth because you want to save Me Too for serious cases of, Weinstein type of stuff, not for cases like this that are kind of like, are you going to Me Too people for every time adults have consensual relations? It's like you take the sting out of it. Like you can't spread it so thin and maintain the same strength. It absolutely takes the sting out of it. So Epstein, Weinstein, and Franco. Okay, so say like Hollywood is full of scumbags, that should not be shocking to anyone. In Franco's defense, he's kind of in a different position than Weinstein was, because Weinstein had the ability to put people together into films and advance people's careers at a whole different level than Franco had. Weinstein had his finger on the pulse of a lot of, he had his own company. It's a different thing than the order of magnitude. It's probably literally more than an order of magnitude in the ability to put money together, put actors together with directors and get funding and that kind of stuff. Like Weinstein was probably top of the game. Franco, yeah, he made movies with Rogan, and they had a crew of like a dozen guys who would circle in and out of movies, which is a great way to make movies. There's a bunch of different people do that in Hollywood to varying levels of success. But him and Rogan, they probably made a dozen hit movies. It's like each of these movies, makes a little profit here and there. It's like it starts adding up. Next thing you know, it's like, yeah, you've got like a dozen films to your anyway. So yeah, he made movies, but not like Weinstein. So pressure like Weinstein could put on women. If you heard some of those phone calls of Weinstein like begging, just was, oh gosh, what I say he should have done to himself, I can't say on YouTube. It was too pathetic for words to hear that, and to hear women just not wanting to go up to his hotel room to so he was actually pressuring women sex in exchange for roles. With Franco, it sounds like two adults were having sex, but he paid $2 million to make the issue go away just to avoid a case which probably had no merit. But you don't want your name dragged through the courts and discovery and all that kind of stuff for the 2 years, 3 years it takes for a civil case to go if it didn't get tossed on summary judgment. But the big concept of like, well, should he have sex with students? He says in the interview that he should not have sex with students. So according to his own internal ethics, that's an issue for him. So he did something he shouldn't have done. It doesn't seem exactly like a legal issue to me. And ethically, it depends on whose ethics you want to use. Hollywood is run by vermin. They have no ethics. By, bypassing the long philosophical discussion, I guess the simple conclusion is no, he should not have had sex with students, because those women should have been pair bonding with the father of their child. And a lot of this is deck chairs on the Titanic when you look at a country that's, I won't say it's headed for civil war, but 5 years ago the odds were less, and today the odds are much greatly increased. So take that for what it is. America is a commercial zone. There's no moral ethics or center dogma anymore, even a religion. In 5 years, you're going to see horrors of peak Weimar that you thought were unimaginable. Gee, Bianca, worse than mutilating kids to make trans drag kids dance around on stage at bars for the pleasure of men? What could be worse than that? Well, I guess open sacrifices to Moloch would probably be one stage worse. The next part of his complaint, the complaint against him, was the acting classes. Where he was giving acting classes for like $2,700 or something. We're pressuring the women to be more intimate than they wanted or something. They signed up for sex scenes lessons from Franco and I guess his crew. The whole thing sounds like absolute BS to me. You're telling me the women paid the man for sex scene lessons. I'm sure all acting classes teach intimacy scenes. You know, it's like you got to be comfortable with body contact, staring in people's eyes, doing all that kind of stuff. Like it's just a part of acting. It's like that's an intimacy scene. You have to be very comfortable with saying your lines while you're being held by somebody that is, you know, pretty much a stranger to you. Anyway, so you got a class, but you got to keep in mind, this is not somebody's bedroom. This is a stage. This is a set or a room or wherever they held it. There's lights, there's cameras, because you want to be able to review the scene later. And there's a dozen people who are standing around with notebooks taking notes on your performance. And there's a boom mic overhead. And, you know, it's just not the big deal that you think it is when you're watching it on screen. Everyone is standing watching your performance and talking about it. But say you're a good-looking young lady who wants to take sex scene lessons from Franco. Sounds to me like you want to have sex with Franco after hours, which is indeed what did happen. Maybe in the expectation of future help in movies. But, you know, he can only help you so much. You got to be able to act, and you have to have the look that Hollywood wants at the time they want it. The issue is a lot of people look average and are mediocre actors, and probably more the mediocre performance-wise, because looks now are not what they were. Like in the 80s, you had to kind of be like 110 pounds, you know, just chicks were, you know, very, very lean in some of those 80s movies. I remember watching The Fall Guy, and there's just two chicks who starred in The Fall Guy who were both smoking hot, and you looked at them like, yeah, say they're 5'6", they were probably 115 pounds. We're talking super, super lean, just tiny petite girls, because they're probably, you know, had never saw a carb, or they're just, you know, they're eating like almost nothing to be able to fit in those bikinis, and they look freaking fantastic. The thing is, there's more body diversity now, and I don't mean that in kind of a cringe way. It's just you see a lot of different shapes on screen, which is great, because you know if you're funny but you're 140 pounds, it's like you should have a chance to be funny on screen just because you're a little bit heavier than the average. You know, not everyone has to be a supermodel, but then you get situations like Amy Schumer, who's got a career, and she was, you know, even when like 15 years ago when she was doing stand-up, I think, she was never lean, but she was leaner, and she did one special, I think it was called Mostly Sex Stuff, that was funny. It was like one 45-minute special that was like legitimately funny, and then it seemed after that she was never funny again. So I'm not sure who was writing that material, and she was lean at the time. It's like it's easier to listen to, and she was, you know, lean-ish, so she was probably, when she was doing that, she was probably like 150 pounds. But she looked okay, and she was funny. Delivery was good, and then later on you look at her like, oh my god, she like looks like she ate. Amy Schumer, she gained like 50 pounds. It's the same thing happened to Lena Dunham for some reason, which I don't understand how people are in Hollywood and they gain all kinds of weight. It's like you're being paid partially for your delivery, but partially the way you look, the package that's delivering it. Like, this is your gig, and you let yourself gain 50 pounds? Like, how hard is it for a career? It's like you're being paid for this. I kind of think that if somebody was paying me, I could give up Snickers bars. Who knows? Maybe it's really difficult, because it seems to be insurmountable for, like, Lena Dunham. She's got to be 300 pounds now. Like, what roles are you going to play where you can't even walk up a flight of stairs. I mean, you just cut yourself out from 90% of roles. Anyway, out of all these movies he did, I think Pineapple Express was probably my favorite. That was a fun, really ridiculous movie, but they managed to pull it off, even though it was like a 2-hour movie and the plot was insanely stupid, but they still managed to make it work. Why? Because they had the three guys. The guy who played that baseball movie, I think he's Italian. I forget the name of him. He was in that dinosaur movie that was a remake of that 80s film. God, I'm really bad at this. I think is, you say, oh yeah, he was in that with the slee stacks. They go over the waterfall and they go like back in time. Is it called Back in Time or Land of the Lost or something like that? He was in a remake of that with Will Ferrell. And those guys were in the movie. It was great. The movie really pulled it off. That was a good movie too. I know that didn't get good reviews, but I thought Land of the Lost was really funny. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.